Speaker.
Order. The clerk will now proceed to read the order of the day.
Item 1, resumption of debate on the budget statement.
The question is that Parliament approves the financial policy of the government for the financial year 1st April 2019 to 31st March 2020. Mr. Vikram Nair.
Mr. Speaker, I rise in support of the budget. This year we celebrate our bicentennial, 200 years from the arrival of Sir Thomas Stamford Raffles, and rather fittingly, the budget has made provision for this important milestone. Let me start with a snapshot of how the world may have looked from Singapore midway during this period in the 1920s and 1930s. At the time, the British were probably the most powerful nation in the world, overseeing an empire stretching from North America to Australia, covering vast tracts in Asia and Africa. The British Empire, at its peak, held sway over 23% of the world's population and covered 24% of the Earth's total land area. It was called the empire on which the sun never set, because the sun would literally be shining on some part of the British Empire at any given point in time. Singapore was part of an immense global empire and was a hub for merchants, traders, and workers from around the region to make a home. It was around this time that many immigrants came here, including the Chinese, the Indians, and the Malays from other parts of the archipelago. Many of the founding fathers of independent Singapore were born during this period, including Mr. Lee Kuan Yew, as were my grandparents. Singapore was the impregnable fortress of the British Empire in the East. At this time, it would have been unthinkable that the British Empire might end, or that anything might happen to Singapore. Of course, the fall of Singapore in 1942 changed just about every assumption that the people of that era held about the British Empire. The atrocities that followed in the Japanese occupation left an indelible mark on that generation on what it feels like to be helpless in the face of aggression. And our pioneer generation recognized that security was a prerequisite for prosperity and acted accordingly. Today, Singapore is more prosperous than many of our forefathers would have dared imagine. We have a GDP per capita that is higher than most developed countries, including the old colonial powers. And our people are well educated and enjoy amongst the longest life expectancies in the world. Singaporeans have high expectations, of course, but happily we have a leadership that is ever ready to try and meet this challenge. In this year's budget, the Minister identified 3 megatrends that would shape the coming decade, namely a shift in global economic weight to Asia, the emergence of new technologies, and an aging population in Singapore. These are important trends that provide both challenges and opportunities, and this year's budget is carefully considered to meet the challenges posed by these trends. In particular, this budget focuses on helping people and businesses in a wide variety of targeted areas to better equip our workers and the population for the challenges ahead. For most Singaporeans, the bread and butter economic issues remain of primary importance, and this budget addresses them creatively and effectively. I am also grateful that this budget provides generously for our security and defense needs, though this has received less attention in the course of the debate the last 2 days. As one of the last speakers in this debate, I would like to emphasize that I think it is important for us to remain committed to our security needs and to anticipate and deal with the new threats we face. Multilateralism is under unprecedented challenge and nationalism is on the rise. In the post-World War II era, the institutions such as the United Nations, the World Bank, the International Monetary Fund, and subsequently the World Trade Organization were set up to facilitate multilateral cooperation on the most important matters facing countries, namely security, trade, and financial systems. Regional alliances for security and trade continued to develop during this period, and Singapore was involved in many of these alliances. These provided important opportunities for Singaporeans and Singaporean businesses to thrive. However, in recent years, multilateralism is starting to lose its support amongst the most developed world who set up these institutions. The US has pulled back from multilateral treaties such as the TPP and is cutting back on financial support for organizations such as the UN. The European Union is under threat with Brexit, and the pro-Euro leaders such as Chancellor Merkel and President Macron face unprecedented challenge at home. A corollary of this is rising nationalism, and nationalist parties are getting increasingly popular. In the absence of a strong multilateral threat against the use of force, such as the UN, countries may be more inclined to take unilateral action against each other, or even non-state actors in another state's territory, which is a tinderbox. This is particularly dangerous as more and more nations militarize and even develop nuclear capabilities. One wrong move and damage on an unprecedented scale could be unleashed. Militarized non-state actors are becoming an increasing threat. The threat of ISIS is pervasive, not just in the Middle East, where it holds territory, but also in our part of the world, where there are cells operating, and most worryingly, online. Many countries, including Singapore, have self-radicalized individuals who may plan or take part in terror activities. The events that have taken place over the past few nights between Pakistan and India, two nuclear powers, show how these dangerous trends may collide. This sequence started when an Indian military base was subject to attack from a terror group, Jaish-e-Mohammed, operating from within Pakistan, and 40 people were killed. India retaliated by carrying out a bombing operation in Pakistan, which it claimed was targeted at a Jaish-e-Mohammed training camp. Pakistan denied there was any training camp operating there and has since retaliated. There have been firefights in Kashmir, and Indian aeroplanes have also been attacked, with one IAF pilot allegedly captured. Matters are clearly escalating quickly, and this is particularly worrying because both are nuclear powers, and the consequence of any miscalculation would be dire. Closer to home, I'm grateful that matters seem to have cooled down with Malaysia, and I think this has been thanks to the hard work of our leadership team at multiple levels, including the Ministries of Foreign Affairs, Transport, and Defence. However, the fact remains that there are two Malaysian vessels in our territorial waters, and if there is any escalation or threat to our sovereignty or territorial integrity, we have to ask ourselves the uncomfortable question of what we will do. There are also more insidious threats to our country lurking beneath the surface. The cyber hacking on SingHealth by a foreign state actor still leaves me with a feeling of unease, as it is clear there are sophisticated, well-funded entities out there operating against us. There is also growing evidence of foreign interference in elections, with particularly startling reports that both the last US presidential election and UK's Brexit vote may have been influenced by fake news originating from sources outside both those countries. For most Singaporeans, these threats are not foremost on their mind, probably the same way none of our forefathers could have imagined how the world may have changed 100 years ago. Yet, I think it will be important for us to imagine these scenarios and to be able to deal with them both as a government and as a people. Without security and preparation for threats of the future, all our prosperity may end up meaningless. I'm grateful this budget has provided well for our security needs and look forward to addressing these matters in more detail during the COS.